Grief is a topic that all humans discuss, yet not all humans understand. It's a fascinating subject because we try to explain it and add logic, yet it's an inherently illogical process. Your brain copes in a way that is best for you, and not everyone else. You know you should move on, yet your brain keeps you in place. It makes you feel like you've crash-landed on an island you've never visited, and that your loved one has been kidnapped by a mysterious figure and that only you can save them. This game, The Forest, does exactly that. If you're unfamiliar with how The Forest teaches you about grief, then watch and listen. This video is entirely my opinion. I have probably missed stuff because both games include a huge amount of content, therefore some of my conclusions may not be correct. Also, this video will contain spoilers. I will explain and show many parts of the game and its sequel, Sons of the Forest, so if you would like to avoid spoilers, I recommend clicking off this video and checking out one of my others. Finally, the intention of this video isn't to explain some amazing fan theory that no one else has come up with. This is to share the story with those who may be unfamiliar with it, and how it can be interpreted to have a more enriching experience. I don't know how in-depth my analysis will be, and you'll only know once you hear it, so why not give me a shot? Without further ado, join me as I tell you about the game that teaches you how to handle grief. A plane crash is pretty up there when thinking about modern horrors. In this game, however, the horror comes from surviving the crash. Landing on a mystery island and waking to see a red man stealing your son from you, then seeing the bodies of the other passengers is a true nightmare. You could be a survivalist superstar, but all you know in that moment is you need to survive first, then find your son second. You gather materials, you chop down trees, you make a base, then you hear something in the distance. Could it be a survivor? No, it sounded weird. You leave your base to find the source and stumble upon a massive sinkhole. As if that wasn't grand enough, you see humanoid creatures diving into the sinkhole. You stumble backwards, wondering what hellscape you've come across. Then you see a village in the distance. Thank God, you think, there are people here, I can get help. You sprint towards the village and, to your dismay, you see heads on spikes, intestines now curtains, and a bucket of blood. There were humans here at some point, but they're not human anymore. The cannibals that inhabit this village are not to be reasoned with. After days, maybe even weeks of perfecting your base and exploring the caverns and crevices of this island, you're finally ready. You ignore the signs of old Christian mercenaries pointing to an artifact of God's creation. You clutch at the children's drawings scattered around the caves, knowing your son is near, and you gather the tools necessary to make it into the sinkhole. You make it down there and are deafened by the screeches of the creatures you had encountered in the cave system. You head to the pool marking the centre and you climb down. As you go throughout the caves, you are reminded of the humanoid cannibals that haven't had the grace of sunlight. Their pale, almost bluish skin and their stretched proportions mark them as formidable opponents, but you defeat them. You finally reach the end of this myriad of caves and stumble upon a door. Having found a keycard marked Sahara in your previous adventures, you scan it and the door opens. You enter the bright orange hallways and can't help but gawk at the first true sign of civilization since you crash landed. You can see tables and chairs and laptops and coffee machines and blood. Lots and lots of blood. Your momentary hope is disbanded as you remember your mission and what it took to get this far. You trudge through, occasionally going through the roof and various other side entrances to traverse this abandoned lab. If you had been paying attention, you would have already known what this place was for. Sahara's shipping crates on the beaches, the yacht in the bay, and the camcorders showing the disaster that took place. You'd know this lab was experimenting on terminal children, looking for a cure for death. If you had noticed this, maybe you would have taken time to appreciate the lab. Maybe you would have known this was the perfect place for your son. Nonetheless, you keep moving. You occasionally pause and watch the slideshows, revealing the true ages of monsters like Virginia, age 12, and Armsy, age 6. It seems that whatever is being used to find the cure here, it doesn't always work. In fact, you have no evidence to suggest it ever works. The same tests run again and again and again. No resurrected children, no parents crying with joy, no workers celebrating at the water cooler, just dead bodies throughout the lab, congealed blood marking the floors and abominable messes in the observation rooms. Then, in the distance, you hear it. You enter the room that harbours a hum and see something in the centre of the room. It's dark, sharp, and man-made, but natural too. It's held together by the stones of the caves and the wires of the lab. When you stand in front of it, the jagged knives of rock appear like a tomb. You approach and push, and there he is. Your son. He's not well. In fact, he looks like he hasn't been well for some time. It's not clear if the obelisk is trying to keep him alive or if it's simply a vertical coffin, but you don't care. You place him on the table and begin hooking wires to him. You don't know what they'll do or if they'll work, but there's no logic in this place anymore, only grief. All wires attached, the screen blares a message. New sample required. New sample? New? What do those words even mean? How can I find a new sample in this lab? The footprints. The bloody little footprints. They're not Timmy's. Again, if you had been paying attention, you'd know they were always there. Little Megan, daughter of Matthew Cross, the Red Man. The Red Man. He's dead. He's dead in the corner. Crayons are now a part of his face, and Megan, she's not here. You go further into the lab and come across a great hall. The hall has partly glass floors looking down into the caverns. You always felt like you were being watched, but now you knew. You were. Well, maybe those who came before you were watched. This observation room hasn't been that for a long time. You head through the room and in the distance see a little girl and hear her little giggles. Megan. You approach Megan, seeing her play with paper and crayons and a plane. She flies it through the air in her hand, then makes a whoosh sound and hits it on the ground. Then she points. She points at you, and then she begins having a seizure. You want to help, but just as you reach forward, an arm comes out of her chest. Then another, and soon she's a mutant like the rest of them. She's the largest mutant you've ever seen, and she is strong. She launches herself across the room at you. She spins like a spinning top, and she vomits mutant babies to finish you off. But you won't let that happen. You've come too far, and you've survived too much. How would it be fair on your son to die now, knowing you were that close? It wouldn't be fair. And so you equip your various weapons, and after a harrowing fight, you win. The arms fall off Megan, and her limp body falls to the floor. You take her back to the obelisk and you place her in your son's place. You wait for the doors to close to finally bring back your child that you fought tooth and nail for, and the doors stay open, and her corpse falls forward. The screen flashes, live sample required. You're done. You haven't seen any other human life on the island. For all you know, you don't just need a live sample, you need another child. As you think, you notice a golden keycard had fallen from Megan. You pick it up and notice a final door you hadn't yet opened. You scan the card, move through the final caves, and reach an elevator. As the elevator moves higher, you think about what you've gone through. This was definitely not what you had in mind for a holiday, but you can't help but be grateful for what you've learned. Besides, you're a survivalist superstar. You have proved your worth and discovered things no one else knows about. By all means, you win. You win at your job, you win at life, the doors have opened. You walk through and are standing on more observation decks, but of the snowy mountain this time. You turn a couple corners and are met with you don't even know what this is. It's a room with black hexagons, another humming sound, and another obelisk? It's completely different from the other one. It kinda looks like an egg, but made of rock and bright blue light. Its hums haunt you, reminding of what you just endured. You reach the end of the room and find a desk. The screen says, "Activate," and shows a picture of a plane. Highlighted on the picture are 3 spots and the words 3 matches identified, head of the screen. Before you can even stop yourself, you press activate and the second obelisk switches from a hum to a roar. The roar is joined by a second, the plane crashing down and a wing even being taken out while it falls. You watch it get lower and lower and lower until... It's been a year, and what a year it's been. You were right, you won at life. You were rescued, your survivalist career had been catapulted further into stardom than ever before, and your son, your dear son, was alive. You await backstage, ready to yet again tell the story of how you survived and to plug your new book as you hold your son's hand. His head twitches and you smile softly. The whole ordeal really did take a toll on him, but you remind yourself, he's alive and he's proud of you. He holds your hand tightly, as you do with his, and the curtains are drawn. You get interviewed and even get to show the audience how to chop a tree. Easy. You've done this so many times. Enough times that the cannibals were probably worried they'd have none left. You lift your arms, axe in hand, and swing. What's going on? Why are the crowd screaming? You turn and... Timmy? What's wrong? Why are you shaking? Why are you grabbing your throat? Oh my god, he's having a seizure. This is what happened with Megan. It's happening all over again. Timmy, he's gonna kill everyone. He's gonna die. You rush over and hold him. This wasn't the first seizure he's had, and it certainly won't be the last. The expression on his face is agonizing for you, but it's better than not seeing an expression at all. He soon stops shaking, and you smile softly. Timmy wakes up, a bit shocked, and you continue to hold him. This whole ordeal was multiple lifetimes worth of adventure, exploration, and trauma. It's not Timmy's fault, it's difficult to deal with. Years later, Timmy's managed to do alright. He's having a shower in his apartment. He's living alone and he can look after himself. Sure, the scar on his face likes to remind him of everything that happened every time he brushes his teeth, but it's not too bad. If anything, it's kinda cool. He spits out the leftover toothpaste and sits on his bed, flask in hand. He's allowed to cope with alcohol. Who wouldn't after all that? And the cross on his wall? Well, religion also makes it easier to cope. Ignore all the clothes scattered around the room. It's not easy for young adults to be tidy all the time. Ignore all the notes pinned to every single inch of wall. He's just trying to see everything clearly. He's coping, and you can't blame him for that. Nor can you blame him for the map that says Site 2. Shit. He's shaking again. He can't even hold the whiskey. There are things moving in his arms. They won't stay still. Please, he needs help. Please, anyone. Is anyone able to help? Please. The forest should have ended there. In fact, it should have ended earlier. The game benefited tremendously from being early access and allowing people to experience the updates in real time. I still remember when the only clue to the lab was the door that you couldn't open. I remember when that door first got updated to be functional. Perhaps the most painful thing I remember was when the story was no longer cohesive. Don't get me wrong, the story of the forest is very good, but it could have been better. There was a point where, during Timmy's seizure at the talk show, the game would cut to black, and that was it. That was the game. I believe it was a better canon ending than what we got. If you imagine the game as an explanation of grief, this fits perfectly. You see, the amount of time it takes to find Timmy is quite extensive. Playing as the protagonist, you obviously don't know what he thinks and feels throughout the game, but as a player you certainly find yourself occasionally forgetting why you're still there. The game, like grief, seems entirely impossible when you first lose Timmy. The terror of a new place and the fear of not knowing what to do or where you are is immense. You try and cope and do what you can with what you've got, but then the cannibals and the mutants come along and mess it all up. You have to start again, or you can take it as a sign to confront what you're avoiding. You finally face Timmy and see his lifeless body and think, wait, I can save him? He's not dead until I've tried to save him. And so you try and you fight others that are in just as much pain as you. You literally bargain with their lives so you might get your son back. With that ending, you think you've got him back. Some people have this in the form of going through the deceased's belongings or engaging in activities they loved doing. Either way, it feels okay for a while, but then there's the occasional twitch, reminding you of what happened. You can ignore it, maybe even live with it, but that monster of grief is going to hit you at some point. You need to find the power within yourself to overcome the monster and to move on with your life. The sequel, Sons of the Forest, attempts to replicate everything seen in the first game. Unfortunately, it, in my opinion, falls flat as it has no purpose like the first game. If we follow my headcanon of the game ending when Timmy has his seizure a year later, we can easily see why no sequel had to be made. The story was complete and audiences would have been able to understand that. I don't work for End Night, the company who made The Forest, so I can't exactly say why they made a sequel. They may have felt the original story deserved a continuation, they may have felt the revenue from the first game was too good to pass up. And yet, I don't think either of these stand as a reasonable explanation for why the sequel falls flat. The updated technology, the ability to know where you are on the map at all times above ground, the extensive character base added in the background, it takes away a lot of the fear the first game thrives upon. Again, I don't work for the developer, and for all I know the allegory of grief is just something I and others have interpreted out of nothing. Maybe Sons of the Forest stands as an allegory for trauma and depression following grief and I've simply missed it. I'm okay with that possibility. I'm okay with the possibility that I simply don't get the second game in the way I got the first one, but I can imagine why. Like I mentioned before, The Forest being early access and updating along with the lore gave it a special appeal as it felt like you were discovering plot points along with your character and everything had purpose. Yet with Sons of the Forest being in early access, a lot of the mystery from its predecessor was gone. You knew why the cannibals existed, you knew what forms the mutants could come in, you knew about the people paying to have their children experimented on. The sequel shows you more cannibals and new mutants and affirms that the rich did indeed get to enjoy the effects of the artifacts involved, even if they didn't work. But why? The end of Sons of the Forest is eventful. You travel through the lowest part of the caves, traversing lava lakes and rivers, and have to fight these creatures that are burned with crosses. Crosses were admittedly a recurring image from the first game, but adding a creature that's actually damaged from them adds an arguably unnecessary extra layer to the mutants. You have to fight a huge version of these and then find a golden cube. You see, in this game there are even more artifacts. You find that there's a cycle that essentially shocks the island every now and then, and when that happens people become mutants. It could be inferred that this was known about before the site in the forest was used by Sahara Therapeutics, but it's not entirely clear. The golden cube seemingly protects whoever is inside it from the cycle. When you enter the cube, a cutscene plays in which Timmy, who is a side character, has a seizure and some physical effects to his hand, and then the back of the cube disappears and you see a futuristic city with flying cars. The back of the cube returns, the cutscene ends, and you're back in reality and escape the caves. You reach the surface, you fight another boss, and then you can either stay or leave. A problem I find here is I have no idea what the point of the game is. You can call the island Site 2 and have a cutscene at the end of the first game all you like, but when you don't have any references to things in the sequel in the first game, it becomes apparent that the sequel was never meant to happen. The introduction of the futuristic city merited a groan when I saw it, because I had the dread of this becoming a long-running franchise that forgot what the original was about. I don't know what the point is. There doesn't need to be a point, and I don't have to know the point. But any piece of narrative media should at least respect its audience enough to make these issues clear. If this game is just about continuing the lore, then that's fine. If this game is just about making more money, that's fine. But don't pretend it's a true continuation of the franchise. Its very existence contradicts the story of the first, and it makes the journey you take, frankly, moot. I, like many others, am demanding. I engage in content and I do expect to be met with quality. I find it disappointing when I witness a masterpiece that is undermined by a cash grab or a nostalgia piece. You see, media doesn't have to continue. You don't have to have a sequel or a franchise to everything, even if the fans beg for one. And if you're going to make a sequel, then make it different enough that it stands alone. Take What Remains of Edith Finch. Though many don't realise it, it is a sequel. I can't tell you why, without spoilers, but the company's previous game, The Unfinished Swan, explains a significant part of What Remains of Edith Finch's story. It doesn't try to fix it, or to be better, or to make more money, it just is. I think, inherently, I don't blame End Night for making a sequel that doesn't have the heart of the first. It's also possible that I'm being too harsh. Maybe I am falling for the nostalgia of the original, and the outstanding reviews Sons of the Forest has received are right and I'm wrong. And to be honest, the survival element of the sequel is indeed improved upon from the first game. It is a more enjoyable experience. The graphics are insane and the exploration is more streamlined, but do you want it to be nicer? It's a horror game where you crashed onto an isolated island filled with demonic creatures and mysterious scientists. Horror games don't have to be janky and awkward to be scary, but they don't have to be easy and streamlined to be enjoyable. Ultimately, I think the horror element is superseded by a need to expand upon the lore, to improve mechanics from the first game knowing it's too late to go back, and change the original and to hold on to the survival aspect. There's nothing wrong with these things. Sons of the Forest is, according to many, a wonderful sequel. For me, I still think it shouldn't have happened. Perhaps in my effort to explain the concept of grief within the first game, I've fallen into the trap that grief sets, and I'm in denial that the sequel has happened. Perhaps the forest has met its goal, and I am one of many who will repeat the never-ending cycle that is grief. Thank you for engaging in my content. I know this video may come across as highly or overly critical, but in all honesty, I actually don't have that much of a problem with the sequel. I just think the first game does what it does so well that it does make the sequel look slightly inferior by comparison. But then again, as I said in the video, at the end of the day, I'm the one that's made this interpretation of the first game. I can't then judge the second game on a metric that I've made up. So I hope you enjoyed this. I'm hoping to do more game-centered videos in the future as well as some political ones. So if you are interested and you liked my analysis, my storytelling, and my overall content, then please subscribe. Check out the link in the description where I will have my other accounts on different platforms, and I hope to see you again soon. Have a nice day!